obviously Riot MMO has been like super fucking anticipated. Everybody's been talking about it. People are just going wild. Every time I watch a video, people ask me when I'm going to watch this video, and it's finally going to happen. Let's take a look at the Riot MMO races and classes. I'm kind of curious to see what this is going to be, honestly.
Well, I'm back. Last time we had a look at the world of Riot's MMO, and we talked about how the overall world design has been done for a few years now. If you have no idea what League's universe is about, I would recommend watching that one first.
Yeah.
But now that we learned about the basics, we can dive into the other big MMO topic, the playable races and classes. When it comes to the races, just like the world, they are pretty much done. Over the years, the lore fleshed out the races of Runeterra. And
I have no idea what any of the races are in any of the Riot world, except there's like cat girls, and I think one of them's like Ahiri or something like that. Like that is the extension of my understanding of like the races in Riot's MMO. Yeah, of Yordles, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Now they each have their own unique story. In fact, at this point, it feels like we know Riot will not make up a brand new race. Of course, they could always theoretically do it, but I seriously doubt they would. Because that would be like forcing a new race into the world of Lord of the Rings. It would feel off among all the already established rules. I strongly doubt you wanna put a bunny person next to Aragorn. With that said, don't worry, because the lore will allow Riot to make up new races and make them feel natural. I'll show you their clever system in just a moment. But for now, just know that yes, we already know the races of this world.
Okay.
So the question is not going to be what races Riot is going to make up. The question is going to be, from the races that already exist, which ones will be playable? And perhaps more important...
I do think that it's obviously like a super huge difference between like Middle-earth, Arda, Lord of the Rings universe, and Riot's MMO, because the fundamental of the Lord of the Rings universe is that it is finite. Tolkien is not making new content about Lord of the Rings, so this is something that's established, and like if you're adding new stuff onto it, it is fundamentally not being made by the person or like whatever made the original. So like if Riot is making new races and new content for the game, I think that's totally fucking fine, right? It's the same as like obviously Tolkien probably in like the first thing that he wrote about Lord of the Rings or like Middle Earth, he probably didn't have every single thing stated in that original book, and then he kind of fleshed out a little bit more of it as he went along. And I think that's probably what Riot will probably do as well. I think that new races are not really a bad thing. I don't think you should, like, it's like in WoW, like, we've had this thing where, like, in expansions, we have to have a new race or a new class. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's just, you know, add something like that whenever it makes sense for the lore. That's about all there is to it. But if they added new races, I don't think it really matters, because they were the ones that originally made the content. That's what makes it different from Lord of the Rings, in my mind.
Importantly, how will they be playable?
Okay.
You see, a few years back, I released a similar video where we talked about the classes and the races together with TB Skyen. And today, I would not recommend you watch that video. Back then, I was still clinging onto the idea that faction-based MMOs were a good idea. It worked.
So he didn't play Classic WoW at that time. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Faction-based MMOs, like, it's just... I think that in a lot of cases, it depends on like how much influence which faction you're on really has, and if the game has any counterbalancing systems to like offset too many people playing on one faction. But I don't think faction-based MMOs are like fundamentally bad. I just think that they're bad in 95% of circumstances.
It worked for WoW, and it worked for my guilty pleasure, WildStar. Unfortunately, what I didn't know is that merely a year later, the idea of faction-based MMOs would crumble to dust. That's because...
Well, it's also, I think that's the thing. It's like people go and they play Final Fantasy and you don't have that barrier to entry. And like now you can play, like there's data center travel now, right? So like you can just go play with anybody you want whenever you want to play with them. And it's like if one game has this and the other games don't have this, everybody's like, well, fuck this. I want to play with my friend. That's all there is to it. And like... the lore and the kind of like just like the ideology behind like the game and like what the intentions and vision are behind it, all of these things in my mind fall to the wayside the moment that you introduce like player friction. If the lore makes the experience playing the game worse, then the lore should not take precedent over gameplay. Gameplay and being able to do what you want in the game should always be number one.
Factions have a massive flaw. Besides the fact that PvP is almost guaranteed to be one-sided. I mean, who would want to play for the losing side? Especially if there is no compensation.
Exactly.
Classic WoW is a perfect proof of that. Not to mention New World. But also if you...
To be fair, our New World server was not that bad, but it's also like, I mean, let's be honest, there were only like 3 territories that actually mattered in New World, and nobody else cared about any of the other ones. Like, oh wow, we lost Morningdale. Oh damn, we're gonna lose like $30 because of that. Meanwhile, Windsward is printing millions of dollars. I mean, that's just what happens.
Split everyone into 2 sides, you are splitting up your player base.
Yeah.
And that is almost never a good idea.
Especially
you simply
not
don't
now.
want to prevent people from playing together. The reason why in the past it worked for WoW is because Blizzard heavily played into the faction pride. People...
Well, there were no other... the other reason why it worked very well is that outside of just knowing somebody, there weren't really a lot of other ways for you to like, oh... Like, there wasn't Facebook whenever WoW came out. There wasn't, like, Discord groups for WoW. So, like, you would never go into the game and think to yourself, like, oh, well, where's everybody else playing on? It just, like, wasn't even a concept in people's minds. So you would never create, like, a group of friends or join a group of friends and then know that you're not part of that group. Like, there just weren't apparatuses in existence at that time that really make that happen outside of like maybe playing with like friends at school. That's about it.
Were proud to fight for the Horde or the Alliance. But even back then it really wasn't perfect. And then people started min-maxing the game and they realized that factions didn't matter.
No.
And that's where Riot has the edge. You may know that League of Legends has a lot of different regions, where they all act independently and they all have unique relationships with their neighbors. Because of this, forcing faction alliances into this world would ruin the already established lore. So PvP factions are most likely not going to be a thing. However, despite that, League absolutely has faction pride.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, there's a lot of people that like being different classes in like Final Fantasy. There's people that like being different classes in mini games, right? You don't have to like there's not only one way for you to be excited about playing any certain type of thing.
People love it when a new Shuriman champion is announced because people love that place. And people love it when the new champion is not Ionian, because goddamn we have too many Ionians. Nearly every League of Legends player has a favorite region. And you bet when the MMO comes out, people will want to play for that region. And this is where the brilliance of Riot's world kicks in. You see, the fundamental lore of League of Legends is based around the idea that anyone can be from any region. After an event the story refers to as the westward migration, races mixed up all around the world. So it's not like there is a furry region where you can only see furries. There are definitely regions where you can see more furries, but this world doesn't have exclusives. This means that when you're picking up what you want to play, besides just picking a race and a class combination, I strongly suggest Riot also allows people to pick their origin, with the origin being the starting region.
I think that'd be fine. I mean, like, yeah, that's okay. The only negative with that is that whenever you have that happen, you have it to where everybody just picks the origin that's the most efficient. Like, I'll give you an example, like in Cataclysm, Hyjal was just better and more efficient for leveling than Vashir. And everybody played everybody played Hyjal, and everybody hated Vashir. That's all there is to it. So as soon as people realize min-maxing day one, the thing is, like, you can't make a game, like, I actually think that it's a failure of the game developer. Like, you make a game and you give people, you program in the game this advantage that one side has, and then you have the audacity to go and complain that people choose the advantage that you put in the game? Get the fuck out of here. This is your fault. You're God. You made this happen. Fix the fucking game. Make it better balanced. There's not anything else more to it than that. I hate that shit. Oh, people are min-maxing. Oh, wow, what a surprise. People want to have the best thing. Do you want $100 or $105? You probably want $105. Do you want $1,000 or $1,005? Well, you probably want $1,005. So it's just like any reasonable application of like min-maxing equals bad outside of a video game is immediately fucking ridiculous. So I think that complaining about people min-maxing is insane. You should complain about the game providing reasons for people to have to min-max. Or feel like they have to min-max.
Without a system like this, you would force all human champions to be, for example, Noxian. And that is simply not how this world works. So I've been rambling about how this world works for quite a while. So now let's actually dive into all the races that exist in this universe. Spoiler alert, League doesn't have too many different races, because it's focusing on depth over variety. Of course, as it is with
I don't think you need a bunch of races. I don't. Like, I feel like WoW, it's like, do we really need Vulpera? I don't think so. Like, I don't think that we needed them. Like, it was unnecessary. How the fuck do we have Vulpera and no ogres? How did this happen?
In RPG there is the human race, but it would be cool if the humans varied depending on their origins. For example, if you pick a human from the Freljord, they would be an Iceborn and they would have extra frost resistance. A Demacian could have a bit more magic resistance. Ionians could have a bit more.
It's about like racial bonuses, right? Or like origin bonuses. It's like this, that sounds like a good idea. But, like, what I think that they should do is they should have, like, outdoor bonuses and nothing that affects combat or any sort of, like, massive level of, like, functionality. So, like, for example, you know how, like, Dark Iron Dwarves can use, like, the tunneling thing and they can run faster in old instances or something like that? Like, the moment that you introduce combat advantages, or even like mass scale like usability advantages, like, you know, Blizzard was complaining about Drakthir. Like, obviously that was stupid, but there are examples of that being the case where, like, for example, like one race is just way better. Like human is really good because it has 10% experience, or sorry, 10% reputation gain in WoW. Like, that kind of stuff is not super cool because it actually doesn't provide people. You think that it adds flavor, but it actually takes it away. Because now, whenever you see somebody, and like this is just the truth of the way that these games work, if you see somebody who's playing like a human priest, for example, in classic WoW, you know that like the odds are this person doesn't really give a fuck about their character as much as somebody playing a dwarf. Because dwarf priests have Fear Ward, and Fear Ward is better in most circumstances in classic WoW for priests. So it's like you cannot design a game that provides advantages that are imbalanced and then expect there to be a balanced outcome. That's what I would say. You guys see what I'm saying? Imagine playing, what's this, Eraser should only be cosmetic background or for people who RP? No, I disagree with that. I think that, like, for example, like Tauren, you could have, like, you know, I think Tauren can do herbalism faster, right? That's fine. Who gives a fuck? Herbalism's not really a tremendous advantage that people get. Like, yes, it is better, but, you know, it's not that big of a deal. You have plenty of racial bonuses that people have in WoW that are not combat defining. You have many of them. So this isn't something that's impossible. It's very easy to do.
more nature resistance, Shuriman's heat resistance, and so on. I think it's going to be crucial for Riot to preserve the feeling of every origin feeling at least slightly different. This is an RPG after all, and this.
Well, I think that you should have like gear and stuff that you can get from the different regions and like different types of like faction rewards that are styled around the theme of the area, right? Like you had that one where there was this like it's basically like this undead like fucking like badass like warrior that's like imprisoned underneath the city. I forgot which one it was. And like you want to have like armor that you can get in the game that looks like that. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's what it should be. And, yeah, it touches on, Mordekaiser. There you go. Like, that's cool. I don't think that you need, like, specific types of, like, things that you can only get there. But it should be more of a cosmetic choice in a lot of cases. I know that there are people bringing this up. Yes, I think I still do stuff. I don't know how to get the rest of the black stuff off my face. I tried. I washed it off last night, but it just hasn't all come off. I did a cosplay stream last night with Amaru and Jessica Nigri, and they dressed me up like a girl, and so I still have a little bit of the eyeliner on. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Despite the fact that balancing is usually a big issue, I strongly believe these RPG elements have to be preserved. But if Riot is afraid of people min-maxing the game from the very beginning...
well, you can't be... It's not about being afraid of it, it's just this is what's going to happen. Like, it's just what's going to happen. If there is a way to min-max, people will min-max. Like, that... And it's not the player's fault. Everybody will do it if they think that's the effective way to do it. Like, it's just, like, embrace it, acknowledge it, and plan for it. Because if you're not embracing, acknowledging, and planning for it, all you're doing is setting yourself up to fail.
Focusing on the origin stat with the most value, Riot can always do the safe thing and only give each origin different customization. In the Freljord, people tend to be more pale, with lush beards and Nordic tattoos all over their bodies.
Sure.
Shurimans have the classic dreadlock style. People from Bilgewater have the pirate crew tattoos.
Yeah.
Piltovans are your fancy mustache people, and Ionians have the wild, untamed hair and beards. So even...
I think it'd be cool if, like, you do, like, the racial quest line in that area, and you're able to unlock certain customizations. You know what I mean? Like, that would be cool.
Without special origin stats, I do believe these unique character customizations would enhance the region pride too. So, that's what humans would be about. Pretty versatile and nothing too special in an RPG world. So now, let's have a look at the more unique races.
Okay.
After humans, the second most spread out race are the Vastaya. As we mentioned in the last video, the Vastaya are a race that came to be after humans started mating with magical animals. But the thing is, depending on where they are from, there are loads of different kinds of Vastaya. From cat boys to...
So you've got cat fuckers, pig fuckers, dog fuckers, bird fuckers, and everything like that. Snake fuckers, lizard fuckers. Okay, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, really, I don't know, that seems pretty reasonable to me. Okay, I get it.
Fox girls to lizard girls. In fact, here's a family tree of all the Vastayan tribes, and even this doesn't cover all of them.
Holy
and
fuck.
This is where Riot can pull off something genius. As I said, this world already has set rules.
That's a lot of furries,
so it would be very difficult to introduce a brand new race into this universe. However, it is going to be very easy to just make up a new Vastayan tribe.
Yeah,
so
it's like one guy just fucking decides to start, I don't know, like have sex with a rhinoceros. And then next expansion, well, now you have like a customization option where you can be like a rhino guy or a rhino girl. Like, I don't know. I think that, yeah, I mean, fuck. Okay, all right, sure.
I propose that Riot doesn't make the Vastaya as a playable race overall, but instead it would be cool if Riot let the specific tribes to be playable races. This would leave the door open for them to introduce new playable races later down the line. If they cross off all the Vastaya at once, they kinda shoot themselves in the foot. But I know, here I go mumbling about how the world works again. So let's have a look at some of the specific tribes.
Alright,
when I say Vastaya, most people think of Ari.
Yeah, see, that's the only one that I know right there. That's the only one. I don't know
from
any
the
of the
Vastani that look like foxes. Although her tribe is mostly gone, the lore can justify new members to be found, so they can be playable. The Kilash tribe comes from the jungles between Shurima and Ishtal.
Okay.
These lion-like people are known for hunting dangerous beasts.
I would have never
and
guessed.
they take great pride in trophy collecting.
Okay.
It's the average mount collector. The Shimon Tribe are monkey-like people from Ionia. While their older members are very wise, their younger members can be very goofy. The Otrani come from Mount Targon, resembling the classic goat people.
Goat fuckers.
Their hobbies are taking care of the Stellarcorns. The Lowland Tribe are Ionians who resemble bird people. This tribe likes to combine the art of dancing with lethal assassinations. The Uvikat are something close to lizards, though they do have the ability to shapeshift. Out of all of the other tribes, these are the closest to their pure blood ancestors. And we also technically have the Marai,
fish fuckers.
The fish people, whom I doubt are going to be playable. Imagine modeling boots for them. Now, these were the more pure blood tribes, but there are many more Vastaya who don't fit any of these. For example, Set has an Ionian Vastayan mother and a Noxian human father, so he doesn't really have a tribe. Long story short, the Vastaya are an incredibly versatile race and Riot can use them in a million different ways.
Sure.
This is where they can really go wild. But that's it for the Vastaya. So now, let's have a look at the third most popular race, the Yordles. These are the classic RPG tiny people. In League of Legends, people either adore them or hate them. There is no in-between.
Yeah, I think it's like they always kind of annoy me a little bit, but these don't really seem that annoying overall. If you put all of them into context and it's like which ones do you hate the most, it probably wouldn't be these.
Kinda like those guys.
They're not that bad.
But not those guys, everyone hates them. There is no doubt in my mind that Yordles will be playable, even though they have an interesting catch.
Oh, 100%. Like, obviously people like playing, you know, the little cute characters like this. Oh, every fucking game. How many girls, like, have a character that looks like this? You know what I mean?
Unlike all the other races on Runeterra, Yordles 100%. Are immortal. They are essentially modes of magic that come from a hidden magical realm known as Bandle City.
Okay.
And because they are made of magical essence, when they die, we don't really know what happens. But we assume they return to the Bandle City and there they respawn.
Yeah,
with that said, the lore suggests that maybe Yordles can die, but they just can't die of old age. But let's ignore that, that's a massive rabbit hole. So, you know, when it comes to gameplay, at least corpse running is going to make sense for them. Now, because Yordles are immortal, in most cases they are always happy and cheerful. Even their home realm is very colorful because of that. But then there is also Vex, a Yordle champion who has recently been added into League of Legends, who gives Yordles an interesting perspective.
What's this?
You see, unlike all the other Yordles, Vex hates living. She hates the bright colors and the cheerfulness. You know, it's the average League player. So Vex is constantly...
Yeah, this is like they added this character in for like fucking edgy like middle school and high school girls that play League. That's 100% what it is. Like she's even doing the expression like, yeah, okay, dad. Okay, fine. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, happiest League player, something like that. Yeah, the hot topic shit. Yeah, exactly.
In deep depression and agony. All she wishes for is to leave this world, but she can't, because Yordles can't die. Anyway, just like all the other races...
Again, I love stuff like that because it's actually, like, as I said, I feel like so many fantasy stories are written by fucking pussies. They never touch on any interesting topics. They never have anything where the bad guys ever win. It's always the good guys are the good guys, the bad guys are bad, the bad guys want to be bad because they are bad, and then they lose. Oh, wow. What a great fucking story. This is so interesting and compelling. I can't believe it. Holy fuck. Like, it's like these people have no fucking sense of adding a morally gray character into a story without having it have some kind of fucking parallel to their real life politics. I hate it. It's so fucking reductive and boring.
Yordles can be found all around Runeterra. There is Poppy in Demacia, Colette in Noxus, Kennen in Ionia, Rumble in Shurima, and so on.
Yeah.
But now, so far we have only covered the races which I'm pretty sure will launch with the MMO.
That's the go.
The humans, the Vastaya, and the Yordles are the core of this world.
Black Mage.
So now we are diving into the races that still exist in this universe. But it's going to be up to Riot if they make them playable. First of all, there are the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs are different from the Vastaya because they don't have magical ancestors. They are just a standalone race. Originally, the Minotaurs controlled the mountains south of Noxus, but because Noxus is Noxus...
I mean, how do you get a Minotaur? I mean, you just do the math. So basically, like, correct me if I'm wrong about this, in Greek mythology, Poseidon wanted to hook up with this girl, but she didn't like him, so he said, fuck this bitch, I'm gonna make her attracted to bulls. And she made, so he does this to her, she fucks the bull, and then that's the Minotaur. And then the dad of the Minotaur, right, her husband, is upset because, you know, I mean, it was Zeus, right? Okay, it was Zeus. Well, anyway, so it's like this guy comes out, and that's why he put him in the labyrinth. So he couldn't get out. That's how the whole thing happened. So, I mean, I feel like they're not really a standalone race. I mean, even in, like, the base lore, that's how it happened.
Soon they absorbed the Minotaurs into their empire.
Zeus is bad guy?
With that said, some Minotaurs fled the tyranny of Noxus and they joined the other regions. A great example is Kryl, the Minotaur fighting in the elite armies of Demacia.
Okay.
And yes, the Minotaurs also have the stereotypical sexy female version in this universe, so they can easily be turned into a playable race. Next, in Bilgewater, there is an incredible amount of weird fishy people. A lot of these could be really cool playable races when Bilgewater gets its expansion.
Yeah,
although modeling helmets for a hammerhead shark is going to be interesting.
I think that, like, for a lot of things, you shouldn't have to, like, you can add a customization option without having it have every single type of customization option available. Like, for example, whenever you play an undead, the way armor looks on an undead doesn't look the same as it looks like a human or like a dwarf or something like that. And it's like, even in a more extreme example, you have, like, mechanomes. Mechanomes, I mean, fuck. Like, you can't even transmog some of the armor slots.
Also, can't forget about the trolls. Previously I showed you the ice trolls, but there are also the sand trolls. And here's an interesting fact for League veterans. We have never seen a sand troll, but because of Ezreal's adventures, we know they exist. They should be around Icathia, which is where Jax is from, who also has 3 fingers, by the way. So it is extremely likely that the mysterious Jax is a sand troll.
Yeah.
Regardless, the majority of trolls are united under Trundle, the self-proclaimed Troll King, who is fighting in the service of Lysandra, who is a baddie even though she is morally right. So since the majority of the trolls are our enemies, I doubt they will be a playable race. Lastly, let's not forget...
I don't know really if, like, that would be very hard to say if they would do that, like a troll race. I think that you want to have, like, some Because, like, some people like playing fantasy games to play, like, a self-insert. Some people like playing fantasy games to play something that's, like, totally different, right? You've got something like, I don't know, a fucking, like a Tauren or a Hrothgar or something like that. It's just something totally out of left field.
That this universe also has Yetis. Fun fact, before everything got frozen, the Yeti civilization was very advanced. They even had their own technology based around magic. In fact, Willamp, the Yeti Nunu is riding on, is a hologram from the Yeti technology. But then, as the civilization disappeared, the Yetis went a bit more ferocious. So no, they won't be playable either. But that's pretty much it for the races.
It's like ogres.
As I mentioned, there aren't too many different kinds. But that's because Riot is avoiding mimicking other RPGs. That's why there are no dwarves or elves here. Runeterra is simply trying to be unique in every way, and so far...
I don't think they should worry about that too much. I mean, the fact is, like, everything is always derivative of something else. There's always going to be some kind of thing that somebody did before that's exactly like what you're doing now. I mean, fantasy, and also, like, I mean, pretty much every type of fantasy has Tolkien DNA. I mean, like, let's be honest. So, like, I don't think that's a bad thing either. It's just, you know... so, like, if they added dwarves or elves or something like that, I don't think anybody would really give a shit. I don't think that's a big problem.
It is working. Now, I also have seen some people asking if Darkin will be playable. To which I have to say, that's like asking if you can play as a god. The Darkin are a corrupted version of the Ascended God Warriors. A single Darkin can annihilate an army of 1,000.
So
in
it's
fact,
like a Death Knight.
The Darkin known as Aatrox is the only being in existence that managed to kill a celestial god. He stabbed someone wielding the power of the Aspect of War so hard, the Aspect of War died. So no, I don't think Darkin will be playable.
Okay.
Anyway, with all the races covered, assuming Riot is going to use the Origin system, this is what the playable races could look like. Humans are versatile, they are everywhere, there is not much to mention there. When it comes to the Vastaya, the common tribes can easily appear in Noxus, Piltover and Bilgewater. These are the regions open to everyone. On the other side, the Vastaya are closely linked to spiritual magic, so you will hardly find one in Demacia, since it is a firmly anti-magic region. And somehow, not many Vastaya were ever mentioned in the Freljord, so Riot doesn't have to force them there. But then we have Shurima, Ionia and Targon. Assuming these would be saved for expansions, they could be used to introduce new playable races. Since I doubt all the newcomers remember the names, the Kilash, Lothlan and Otrani are the Lion People, Bird People and Goat People.
Yeah, let's
when it comes to the Yordles, as I mentioned, they can originate...
Yeah, it's like everybody like, yeah, what's it really called? Like, oh, it's the Goat guys. Yeah, I know you.
From anywhere, but they do avoid the Freljord and Targon because of the harsh climates. And yes, I know there were some prehistoric Yordles in the Freljord, but after it got covered in ice, they disappeared.
Yeah.
And lastly, the Minotaurs can be found in Demacia and Noxus. But it does make sense for some of them to flee to the Freljord, and others to travel to Ionia during the invasion. With all of this said, remember, this is just my decently educated opinion. Since the races are pretty much mixed up all over Runeterra, Riot could also lift the limitations and let every race start in every region. And that
might be a better idea. Like that's one of those things where that's probably a better idea for the game, even though the other thing would be a better idea for the lore. It gives the world less identity. Really? How do you measure identity? Because I measure not being able to play with your friend on the character that you want a lot higher than some ephemeral idea of identity. Oh, it's identity. No, I don't give a fuck. Like, this is... No, I'm not going to take that seriously at all. The game sucks. If you can't play the game the way you want to play the game's bad. Identity, the world feel, all of this is just bullshit. I have to go AFK for like 2 minutes. I need to use the bathroom. And then I'll be back, okay? Why'd you wash your hands for 5 minutes? You know, it is what it is. Alright, let's go.
Be fine with that. Some story would be wonky, but it wouldn't be anything horrible.
Right.
Although, I still believe some racial exclusivity helps the feeling of RPGs. So, all of this is still only the first half of the video. If you wanna take a break and do your business...
I think having, like, some classes or, like, some races that, you know, there might not be, like, oh, you can't be a... Like, for the longest time, you couldn't be, like, a Blood Elf Warrior, for example. It's not really that big of a deal. But, like, making it to where, basically, like, if this... Wait, they knew what? I'm confused.
This is still only the first half of the video. If you wanna take a break and do your business without washing your hands, now's your chance.
Wow. I actually don't... I don't know what to say. I legitimately don't even know what to say. Wow. Fuck.
This program will continue in 5
Plan
seconds.
I must have watched it ahead of time. Of course. This was a tactical
Did you wash your
ship.
hands? Okay, so far we only covered the races, which was definitely still the easy part. The much more difficult part are going to be the classes. This is where Riot is facing a great challenge. Partially, it's because there are inherently no wrong answers when it comes to designing a class system. You can really make anything work if you put some thought into it. But more than that, Riot is challenged by the setting itself. League of Legends currently has over 160 different champions. They each have unique abilities, and together they can define about 40 different classes. I counted them myself. From these, Riot has to pick only a handful to be playable, which means the majority of the...
Not necessarily, because you can have specs as well. Like, every warrior, for example, in most games does not play the exact same. So, like, for example, like, you can spec into different things, and different things can be useful in like, their own way. So, yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think that they should stick to... Like, you don't want to think too far outside the box. Like, there's a reason why there was a box to begin with. And I think that, you know, you don't want to, like, try to, like, reinvent the wheel, like, go with, like, the traditional, you know, warrior, hunter, paladin, etc., and then come up with some of your own, like, cool flavor classes on your own. Like how, you know, like, Warcraft has Death Knights and monks and stuff like that.
Classes won't make it
druids.
in, and people who love those classes will be disappointed.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm not a designer, so instead of...
Yeah, you know, it's not your problem. And yeah, also, like, you could also... Like, whenever World of Warcraft came out, everybody wanted Death Knights. Everybody wanted Death Knights and Demon Hunters in classic WoW. But they didn't come out for, like, a long time after that. And everyone was generally okay with that. It was like, ah, yeah, that's fine, right? Because, yeah, I mean, like, in Warcraft 3, my favorite race was the Undead. I thought the Undead, like, the Necromancers, fucking just... You start killing people, you start raising them up as Undead. It's amazing, right? I loved it. And so, I didn't get a chance to play Death Knight until Wrath. But it wasn't a big deal.
Trying to figure out how to make this work. I'm going to show you all the cool, unique classes this universe has.
We got Leonidas.
And again, because region pride is a big part of this universe, you'll see that some of these are tied to specific regions.
Okay.
But not the warrior. That one is different in every single region. So let's start with that.
Right.
The warriors in this universe provide a unique challenge on top of the already difficult decisions. It's because in every region, the fantasy of a warrior is represented by something else. In Demacia, it is the Dauntless Vanguard. These are the classic knights in shiny armor pursuing justice. In Noxus, the traditional warrior would be part of the Trifarian Legion, which is a rank you can achieve after killing your best sparring friend in combat. These guys rarely use shields. In Shurima, the classic warrior is the warrior of the Golden Army. These are fighting for the glory of the Shuriman Emperor.
Okay.
In Piltover, you would have the Enforcers. Simply said, it's the cops. People will know these from Arcane. But in a way, the Wardens are the melee warriors of Piltover. But then, in the Freljord, warriors are represented by the Berserks, either wielding axes or giant blades as they worship the primal god known as the Iron Boar. On Targon, we have the Warriors of Rakor, which are somewhat themed after the classic Spartan armies.
Yeah.
Then, in Ionia, the classic warrior is known as a Blademaster.
Exactly. Well, that's the same as like in WoW. Like, and these are specs, right? These are obviously different specs you can have, because like you have like a lot of the different types of like what is the warrior fantasy? The warrior fantasy is either like fucking some giant armor-clad juggernaut that just can't even be pierced even with like the strongest of swords. He's like fucking 7 feet tall and he can just kill anybody, but he's really slow, right? You have that kind of a warrior. You have like a gladiator, right? Because you think of like movies, right? It's like Russell Crowe in Gladiator, Leonidas in 300. You have, let's see, for a Berserker, what would be a good example for a Berserker? I mean, it's just like your traditional Viking Berserker, right? A guy that's like not wearing a lot of armor, he's got a really big weapon, he's super strong. Conan the Barbarian, there you go. Yeah, Conan the Barbarian, perfectly. Like, yeah, Guts, you've got that as well. And so you just have these as the different specs. And then also, like for, you know, he's talking about Blademaster, like a Blademaster in Warcraft 3, like, that was very different than a warrior that we have in WoW now. It was actually quite different in many ways. And it's like, obviously, you have like a Blademaster. This is kind of like samurai, some sort of like Eastern warrior, something like that. And like, that's its own type of warrior. So you have these be like subclasses or specs or different play styles. I think that's the solution for it.
Samurai-styled swords that have a rich history in this region.
Yeah.
Also, there are the Vuju Blademasters, which are on a totally different level. The Vuju technique is so powerful it was forbidden from using it in combat. The TLDR version of the story is that when Noxus invaded Ionia, Master Yi obliterated entire Noxian legions on his own, before Noxians realized how overpowered he was and they nuked the town where the Vuju Blademasters were trained. So now there is no more Vuju Blademasters, just normal Blademasters. And lastly, the common warrior in Bilgewater would be a brawler.
Brother.
You see, I just named 8 different kinds of warriors. How is Riot going to handle this? I don't know.
Different specs.
They could just make one warrior class and then just have the players play out the fantasy while wearing cool armor sets.
Exactly.
Or they could make it so that every origin has a different skin of the class.
That's
you know,
true.
all the abilities would be the same.
Like you could have like different types of, I think it's like also racial armor. Like, you have different types of racial armor. Like, for example, the racial armor you'd get from the Pirate Warriors is going to be totally fucking different than you get from the Nordic Warriors. I think that's just what makes sense.
They would
Different
be
weapons
doing the
too.
same
Yeah,
numbers,
exactly.
but when a Noxian swings a weapon, there is a bloody trail, and when an Iceborne Berserk swings a weapon, there is a frosty effect.
Yeah.
But again, this is for
Spell
Riot
effects
to
are
figure
another
out.
factor.
Now I'm just going to show you all the unique and interesting classes from this universe. In Demacia, we have the Mage Seekers. These are the people who hunt down mages.
We had this in Warcraft 3. Spellbreaker was always one of the classes that people had wanted to see. You know, like a male-wearing armor class that had a shield and a sword, and they could do, like, magic damage. So, like, yeah, I mean, these are cool.
Carry with them a stone disc called the Grey Mark. This is the tool that allows them to absorb magic. So this would be sort of an anti-magic class. There are also a lot of iconic Demacian scouts. Also, Demacia has a lot of stories about theaters and bards. But Demacia also brought spotlight onto the Sentinels.
Okay.
The Sentinels of Light are people dedicated to fighting the undead. Because the undead can't really be killed with normal weapons. They
like
use
silver
the
weapons?
relic stones that can be forged into any weapon. Be it a crossbow, a gun, a really big gun, or even a sword. Fun fact, in the lore, the Sentinel guns don't have triggers. You have to will it to fire with every fiber of your body.
That's
so
interesting,
of course,
I like that.
Lucian canonically fired it with his PP. Lastly, this will be unknown to even veteran League players. But Demacia put a really cool twist onto the Paladin class.
What's that?
You see, in League of Legends, when you play as Garen, his ultimate is to smite his enemies with a giant holy blade.
Yeah.
This made people wonder, is Garen a mage? In Demacia? Actually, no. In the lore, Garen has never done anything even similar to this, and that's because there is something even cooler happening. Most people in Demacia pray to the aspect of justice, which they call the Winged Protector. That's why Demacia has a lot of angelic statues. Coincidentally, the aspect of justice can also be found in League, its scale. So what's happening is that when Garen is casting his ultimate, it is not him magically creating a holy blade in the sky. It is actually the aspect of justice answering his call. So even though this universe...
That's effectively the same lore of paladins in WoW. Is like they don't really cast magic, they channel it, and like it's channeled through them. They're not the actual... They are not the genesis of the magic themselves, they're more likely a conduit.
Doesn't really have a paladin class, which would be casting holy spells. This would be a really cool alternative.
Yeah.
People who worship the aspect of justice and let her answer their calls.
Yeah,
Pretty
like an
cool,
inquisitor.
but now let's move on to Noxus.
Does like range
Noxians
damage.
are one of the only regions who harvest black powder, so they also have their own mercenaries with functional guns. In Noxus
Cool.
you can also find a lot of demonic cultists, so I would expect a warlock or a demon summoner, and they also have a few renowned assassin guilds.
Yeah,
and
makes
the
sense.
most unique of them all, Noxus also has a circle of Hemomancers, people who follow
Blood
Vladimir,
magic.
a lord who used to be a hostage to the Darkin, and who
Dracula.
eventually learned how to use their blood magic. So these people use the very same blood magic that shaped the Darkin. Then in Shurima, we may find...
Yeah, again, we have this in WoW. Like, blood magic is very common in, like, you know, fantasy games, etc. I think that's badass. Especially whenever you have, like, because you can create, like, interesting mechanics where, like, the player can damage themselves in order to do something, like, more powerful or whatever. I think that's cool. Like, as long as it's not broken or overpowered or something like that. Like, thematically, it is a cool idea.
Arcane mages.
Like Seal of Blood.
These people follow Zerath, the most powerful mage on Runeterra, whose body has been reduced to nothing but arcane energy. I would honestly love to see this class in-game, because I love the idea of having an Archon form on cooldown. Shurima also has some prophets who can open up tiny portals into the void and summon tiny void creatures. It would be sort of like Warlock in WoW. You know, use the power of the enemy against themselves.
Makes sense.
Then there are the Sand Shifters, people who can use the sand to create sand mirror images. And we can't forget about the Chronomancers, people who use time magic in a lot of creative, interesting ways. Then in Piltover, riding off of the success of Arcane, people will want to play as a Warden. Which is
Oh yeah, 100% people are gonna want to play the same classes from that stuff. I mean, absolutely. It kind of goes without saying. I do think that, like, for the different mages and stuff, just make these classes. It's the same as something like an enforcer. Bro, it's a hunter. Like, you just make it like a hunter or a ranger or some sort of, like, variation of that.
is a more elite version of the Enforcers. These would be equipped with sniper rifles and stun grenades. On the crafty side, there are also the Hextech Engineers. These are the people who can use science to allow them to wield magic even if they are not mages.
That's cool.
And separate from them,
Yeah, I like
there are
that.
also the Artificers. To them, anything from a powerful arm to blade legs should be possible. And down in Zone, I would love to
Different
see some kind of
customization
an
options.
alchemist who's using questionable drugs to help his allies.
Great.
Next we go into the Freljord. Here we can find the Draklorn Inquisitors, which are Lysandra's followers with abilities themed around true ice. Essentially, these would be frost battle mages. But perhaps the
That's
most
interesting.
iconic for the Freljord would be the Shamans. These worship the animalistic primal gods of the Freljord, and all their abilities mimic the primal gods, be it a bear, a fox, a mammoth, or a boar. Then on Targon we would
Okay.
find
So
a
it's
lot of
almost like
people
a
with
Diablo
celestial
druid.
powers. You know, calling down stars and such. But
Okay,
there
yeah,
are
that makes
also the
sense.
Solari who use the power of the sun to enhance their attacks. They also wear massive plated armor, so this would be the tank class.
Right.
Or the Lunari, who use the power of the moon to stay in the shadows. This would be more of an assassin class.
Yeah, it's a rogue or something like that.
Besides these, there are also a lot of star callers around, and even draconic worshippers. Then,
yeah, I think that, like, really, you don't have to add everything in on release. You just add in a good variance of classes, and then based off of what people like, what they don't like, what you feel like is missing in the world, or what makes sense, that's what you add next. Like, I don't think you need to add, like, every single thing in right off the bat.
in Ionia, besides the Vuju Blademasters, which would be far too overpowered, some people choose to fight without a blade. These would be the monks of Hirana.
Yeah.
They channel the power of Ionian dragons to empower their limbs. And don't worry, they are a bit different from the traditional monks. They are far more badass. Think less Bruce Lee and more Dragon Ball. But of course, Ionia is also home to the Kinku ninjas. Their goal is to maintain balance in Ionia. This means that when a spirit starts killing people, the ninjas go out and deal with the spirit. And when people start terrorizing the spirits, the ninjas go out and deal with the people. Most of these...
see, that's kind of what I was saying before about how I like it whenever you have stories that actually have weird types of moral grayness. And like, you can play as the bad guys, effectively. Like, I think that's very important. Be able to do whatever the hell you want.
Are your classic ninjas empowered with spiritual magic. But some are using the forbidden shadow technique. And while they surely look evil, just like anything in League of Legends, it's not really one-sided. These ninjas are simply using questionable techniques to protect their homeland.
Sure.
And honestly, the Shadow Ninjas are so iconic for Ionia, I really do believe they will be playable. Then we get to Bilgewater. Besides all the things that you could do with pirates and monster hunters, the most iconic class of this place are the priests of Buru. The Buru worship the god of motion called Nagakeboros. While they are priests, they fight with full physical strength, while borrowing power from the god to empower themselves.
I don't know how many classes have we really had like that in games, where it's like you have a class that's almost a, it's like empowered by some kind of like void magic or void power. I'm trying to think, like, what would really have like that? Priest, but huge strength? Yeah, exactly. Like enhancement, maybe? A Shadow Priest? Yeah, I mean, like, I think Shadow Priest is probably the closest thing that you could get with this. Yeah, that's probably it.
Usually this means the god spawns tentacles to smack the enemies around. But they also have healing powers, so that would be a really cool support class. In Riot's RPG called Ruined King, you can play as Illaoi, the High Priestess of Nagakeboros. And there you can see all the attacks she can pull off. And this takes us to the last place, Ishtal, which will most likely be saved for an expansion. As I mentioned in the last video, Ishtal specializes in only one thing: elemental magic. So if elemental mages become a class, and they should, even in League elemental dragons are a core mechanic, they would come from Ishtal. But that's it for all the unique classes this universe has to offer. Funnily enough, when I was drafting all these classes, I realized a lot of them fall under specific categories.
Yeah, I mean, like, hybrids I think would be really cool. I don't know, I worry whenever I see a bunch of classes, and this is something I also worry about with Ashes of Creation, is like what happens 3 months into the game where people realize that like a support rogue is just the best class, and then everybody's playing support rogues. So I'm very concerned about that type of thing. But I think that as long as you have, like, the main pillars of the different classes, and each individual thing is not anything super specific, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
So going with the skin idea for all the classes wouldn't be too unreasonable. But developing so many artistic variations of the classes would be taxing. So overall, I believe Riot should not care about disappointing some players for not including their favorite class. with so
I think that's very important. It's like, again, like Warcraft 3. Like, you don't have a... So like, you think about what are the Warcraft 3 like heroes. You have obviously like the Farseer. We have that with the Shaman. The Mountain King is pretty much a warrior. Death Knight didn't happen until like 5 or 4 years after the game came out. Priestess of the Moon, we still don't fucking really have a Priestess of the Moon. What are the other ones? Witch Doctors, yeah, we don't really have a Witch Doctor either. Demon Hunters took forever. Chieftain, we still don't really have a Chieftain. I mean, like, that's like a mix between a Shaman and a Warrior, maybe. And that's about it. Blademaster is a huge one. So Warden, yeah, there's another one. Yeah, we don't have Warden either. I think they added that in the expansion, Frozen Throne, right? So this is exactly what happened with World of Warcraft. And people had wanted the other classes, but I think everybody realizes it's like you can't have everything. It's just what makes sense.
Many options, it's going to happen anyway.
Blademaster's like
Instead,
Warrior? No, it's
pick
not.
a couple of classes that
Very
simply make sense for you. You know, a Blademaster here, an Arcane Mage there, and just have fun. Having fun during development usually translates into great experiences.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not pressuring anyone by stirring up hype. If anything, I'm just happy that people find these videos interesting. And all I'm doing is presenting information that...
I think it's good that he's talking about it now, because I'm sure a lot of the guys that are making and like working on the game are probably watching videos like this, right? They're probably reading the comments, like, realistically. I'm sure like Ghostcrawler and like these guys, they see the videos, and if they read it and they see everybody, wow, man, like, bro, like, everybody wants like the fucking Frost Warrior that can turn into a Yeti or something like that. Like, maybe we should do that in the game, right? Or we should plan for doing that in the first expansion. Like, that's good. It's very, very good that we're talking about this now, because it can actually influence development.
Riot released over the past 10 years. I mean, I know the video is interesting because Asmon only paused 3 times and he said,
That's fucking cool.
and
I like it a lot.
And
I do. That's, what the fuck? This is actually really cool. True. I didn't know any of this. True,
that
true.
to me marks a big success.
Yeah.
Next time we are going to talk about
Very
all
true.
the already established raid bosses of this universe. Which is a very personal topic for me. You know, I am a father, my son is 2 years old.
Okay.
So by the time this MMO comes out, he's going to be just the right age to heal my raids.
Smart. I think this is cool, man. Like, I think this is badass. I'll say it again, like he said in the video. This looks good. I mean, I think that they shouldn't try, like, don't try too hard to make any one thing work. If something's not fitting in, then just don't do it. Or, like, wait until you have a way to do it. The same as, like, Warcraft took forever to do Demon Hunter. But I will say, World of Warcraft Demon Hunters are fucking awesome. They play exactly the way that I would expect a Demon Hunter to play. So yeah, I mean, like, yeah, they're fucking great. So, like, just make sure if it's not perfect, don't do it. With, like, a lot of these, like, really abstract, like, crazy classes, like a Chronomancer. Okay, what do Chronomancers do, right? They change time, they can reorient things, they can reverse wounds, you know, something like this. But, like, if you feel like it doesn't fit into the game, don't do it. I think that's the smartest thing to do in general. And the guy who designed Demon Hunters Go to Dev, yeah, he's a fucking genius. This is really good. Even monks were very good. I think that monks, in a lot of ways, like, if you look at the abilities that monks have, monks did, I think, fill in the class fantasy of what is a monk really supposed to do. Now, I think Demon Hunter, I mean, I'm a Warcraft 3 player, so Demon Hunter is my favorite. Demon Hunter and Death Knight. But still, yeah, monks was awesome, exactly. So, like, it's the idea behind the class, and maybe in, like, Vanilla WoW, they couldn't do it the same way as they did. And I think that that's what they should look at. Is, like, if it's not fitting into the game right now, if you don't have, like, a concept for it that really works, then just don't do it. And stick with, like, the obvious, very basic classes, right? You've got mages, warriors, paladins, druids, but let's see, besides that, like, priests, warlocks, stuff like that, and rogues, and hunters. I think those are pretty much the main fantasy archetypes, and then you have like subtypes like bard, cleric, etc. But I think that's what they should really focus on, and then have a few flavor classes that are very interesting in their own. Barbarian would be nice. I think they should just make those subclasses or specs. It's the same as like whenever you play a warrior in Lost Ark. I mean, you pretty much start off and decide what you're going to be, but warriors are gun lancers, paladins, destroyers, or berserkers, and I think that's basically what they should do with Riot's MMO, is like just make them specs in general. They should do class advancement choices. Yes, exactly. Kind of like how PoE, you can be an Inquisitor, and like an Inquisitor plays different than a Templar. And a Juggernaut plays different than a Berserker or a Chieftain or something like that. So you have like a few different types of flavor that change the way that it plays, and I think that's a good thing. As I said, Necrit's videos are really, really good. I honestly... this is what I said with the first video. Like, I did not know that so much of the work was already done. I had always thought to myself, like, oh, the Riot MMO, it's like, well, they just add whatever, you know, like, girls want to cosplay and guys think would be cool if they looked like that person, you know? Like, that's about it, right? Like, I never really thought that there was anything more to it than that. I didn't even know that there was any lore, right? And so it's just crazy for me to see this kind of stuff, because it's like discovering a whole new world. It's like whenever I started playing Final Fantasy, it's like, oh my god, like this is like, I'm just like stepping into like 8 years of work, right? And I'm just right here. And so it's like you have to understand so much stuff. And so I think that's a good thing. Have you watched Arcane? I'm going to watch Arcane. I haven't yet. I've been watching... Actually, I haven't been watching anything. I've just been playing PoE. But, like, I'm probably, you know, like, I'm not quite as, like... I like, the League started... It's been out for, like, a week now, and so I'm going to probably, you know, dial it back a little bit and try to start watching it. I'm going to watch it. Yeah, hopefully. And there's one video, it's a summary of the lore. I mean, I think I'll watch more of that as the game comes closer to release. But yeah, this guy's videos are great. Like the first video, I can see why so many people wanted me to watch it. And I think this video was equally informative, especially on a more technical level of like kind of, not really technical, but it's like, what are we really going to see? Like what's really going to happen? I think this video did a pretty good job illustrating that.